Good evening. Welcome to Grand Blanc Board of Trustees meeting for July 11th. If we could all rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Robertson, could you call the roll, please?
I would be happy to call the roll, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Hugo.
Here.
Trustee Fike.
Here.
Trustee Raridan.
Here.
Trustee White.
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Here.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. And now, if anybody would care to make the motion to approve the agenda, Ms. Hugo, supported by Dr. Raridan.
Agenda. Hugo motion. Raridan support. Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And now we will move to public comment. Clerk Robertson, have we received any comment cards?
We have not.
Okay, and seeing nobody that is stepping forward, we will close public comment, bring it back here to the board. And at this time, we have a privileged presentation. And the board will recognize Director of Public Services Jeffrey Sears for his 8.5 years of service to the Grand Blanc Township community. So I'd ask Mr. Sears to come up to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Any words, Mr. Sears?
No, I just want to thank the board for all of the opportunities I've been given. Scott and Jude were the ones here on the board that hired me, so I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to serve the community, and I love it here. I'm still going to live here, so I'll come to all the board meetings and pester you. Probably not, but maybe some of them. But I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's been a difficult decision and a bittersweet moment for me. So thank you.
Can we keep your phone on speed dial?
Sure. I'm sure you will anyway. So
Okay. Well, we have the certificate of appreciation that we want to present to Mr. Jeffrey Sears, an appreciation for over 8 years of service to the Grand Blanc Township community, and signed by myself and our clerk. So, awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Sears, the public, DPS or DPW isn't something that is at the forefront of everybody's mind, right? But, if we didn't have such a superior water and sewer system here in Grand Blanc Township, we would hear about it very quickly. And we're glad that we don't hear a lot about Department of Public Works in terms of concerns, because you guys do such a fabulous job. But our infrastructure is second to none here in Grand Blanc Township, and we've got great people that you've helped put in place and that have been here a while too. And we've got Mr. Boggs as assistant, so I'm sure that everybody's going to step up in the meantime. But it'll be a challenge to find somebody to replace you, Mr. Sears. So thank you for your great service to the community. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Fike,
Motion by Fike,
supported by Mr. White.
supported by Trustee White. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, under old business, regarding our strategic planning item on IT updates. And we have Mr. Nate Luceville here, our Director of IT. Good
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm here to, like he said, provide an update to the current projects within the IT upgrades portion of the strategic plan. As far as computer replacements go, we had a plan or a goal of 15 computers. We have that generally every year. And so far this year, we've replaced 17 computers and laptops, so we've surpassed that goal already. We had a goal to establish an IT hardware standard and create a yearly meeting. So I've done that. I've gotten together a group of leaders from various departments that kind of use some of the specialized equipment out in the field. And we will be reviewing on a yearly basis the list of approved hardware and make any changes that are needed at that time. Things could come up, but the purpose of that policy is to limit the number of different systems that IT has to support, and also make sure that due diligence is performed to ensure the compatibility with our existing systems. So it's important to have something like that in place. Obviously, exceptions can be made, but we should be following a standard. The departments that are included in that is the IT department, planning and zoning, assessing, and DPS and DPW for the technicians and the assessors out in the field. The web server replacement, I'm on track to complete this by the end of the year. I have a motion after this to approve the purchase of that server, which should be here by before the end of the year, and I can replace that. The file server replacement, if the CIP funding is approved that I'm going to be putting in for the next board meeting, I'm on track to replace that server by the end of the year. There is one portion of that project, however, where the server would not be turned off likely until it's complete. We will migrate most things off of it. But we do host our on-base document management software on that server. And the version we have is not compatible with new systems. So waiting on a quote to understand what that would cost to upgrade before I can move that off of that server somewhere else. So that might actually have to happen next year because I may need to plan that in a budget. And then the offsite backup, completing that is actually dependent on the replacement of the file server. So if that file server is replaced this year, then I estimate to be completing that by the end of this year, if not early 2024. That's all the updates I had, if you have any questions.
Mr. Kilmer?
So are we going to have to replace the cloud server?
The cloud server as in like the,
Service provider?
oh, I see what you're saying, for the cloud backups.
Yeah.
We're not going to replace that server, but more so what its purpose is if we have some sort of incident happen locally where maybe all of our servers are flooded, we want to have a backup somewhere else of certain things we have, like our files. We might do maybe a monthly and a yearly backup or something like that online, where we'll be able to actually pull that back down in case of an emergency. So that's something that's not in place right now that they want me to get in place.
So Nate, question with regard to, we're going to be moving towards the BSNA online, right?
Yes.
Is there anything we're doing right now to get ready for that, or when? That's not going to take place. We're on the waiting list for that, right? It's going to be.
Yeah, we've completed all the prerequisite stuff that we've been provided a long list of things that are needed from every department to kind of prepare. And they're going to start migrating that data. That hasn't happened yet, but we are on the waiting list since there is a pretty long waiting list to move.
Okay. And then, one of the things we did in the past year was we added the body cams for the police and new cameras in the cars and what have you, and that whole system's working pretty well in terms of the downloading and storage and all that.
It is. It has its hiccups in certain just aspects that we're learning about, and the more we learn, the better, the easier it's getting. But there are certain aspects that could be a little bit frustrating for officers, for sure. They went from a system that's not as complex to a system that's really complex, so it's more to handle.
As a department, what's your biggest challenge that you see out there for us as a township when it comes to IT?
I still think it's cybersecurity. There's still things, there's still aspects of our cybersecurity stack of products that I use that I kind of want to tie up on and to be prepared, but I don't think anybody, you can do as much as you want, but that's still going to be the biggest challenge for everybody, is going to be cybersecurity going forward.
Right. You see any use for AI anytime in the near future in township government?
I think that artificial intelligence is going to be used a lot, especially for attacks against us, because they can build on the fly phishing emails that look legitimate probably, and I know that's already being used in some places. I definitely, I know that I could use AI in different aspects of the IT world to help build scripts and things like that. I think that everybody can kind of start utilizing AI a little bit for sure, even the bad guys, unfortunately.
I think they're going to be using them for a lot of like web bots and chat bots, that kind of thing, that
Yep.
want assistance online. And
I'd like to not, I mean, I'm not going to do that like for support here or anything like that, because nobody likes talking to a bot, and I don't see a need for that there. But yeah, that's unfortunately going to be a lot of things, a lot of roles are going to be taken over by the chat bots, especially order taking things.
right, exactly. Any other questions for Mr. Lucevelt? No. Okay, well, we thank you for the update, and it sounds like we're making progress on updating all of our hardware and software, so great job. And again, IT is one of those things, when we don't hear a lot about it, it's probably a good thing, right? Means we're not having significant issues. So thank you, Mr. Lucevelt. Next, under old business, the board will continue discussion on the police millage request to voters for election timing and language. We've kind of kicked this around for a few meetings now. We did include in the packet the language that Mr. Laddie provided. It sounded to me as if at the last meeting, we had a number of individuals stating that they would be in favor of going with the 1 mil renewal. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouths, but if that were the case, then we would need to have Mr. Laddie prepare the language for that, and at our upcoming meeting, we could start that in motion. I think it takes a few meetings, right, Mr. Laddie, to move that, or?
Well, no, actually it doesn't. So what we can do if you do have a consensus for, well, I think we already agreed that we're going to put it on the November ballot.
Right.
Is that true? So if you do arrive at a consensus as far as what the amount will be, I can have this ready for you to adopt at your next meeting if you'd like that. And I think that our deadline was maybe early mid-April to get it to the county, as I recall.
August
Oh,
15th.
I'm sorry, August.
August 15th.
Yeah, so
So we really do need to act no later than the next meeting.
Right.
that's correct. And it won't take me long necessarily to plug the numbers in. We need to get some information from assessing, but that should be it. So frankly, if you're ready to arrive at a consensus tonight, then I can have that motion ready, or that resolution ready for you at your next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Fike?
I'm ready to move this forward, but I want to be accurate. Now, this is a renewal, right? But there's a little tiny increase in there.
Yes.
So how do I say that when somebody says, what about this police millage? Well, there's a renewal, but, there's a little bit in there.
Well, without getting into the whole Headley and all the
Right.
math involved in that, that's really all that is we're just putting ourselves back up to 1 mil. And so I think if I had to explain it to a layperson, I would say that the process in Michigan is that municipalities each year lose a little bit of that approved millage. And so after a period of 4 years, we've lost maybe a tenth of that millage. And all this does really is it reaffirms that you're going to collect back up to a mill, which is what you already had. But then over the next 5 years, that amount will be chipped away at as well. So really, I think you just got to say that the formula in Michigan allows for millages to be reduced each year by a fraction of the mill. And this essentially is just putting it back up to that full 1 mil.
Well, and I think one of the things that we can explain to our voters and our residents, taxpayers, is that, this 1 mil only raises roughly $1 million, right?
Yeah, it's at its fullest, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So, and our police budget is more like 8 million, so this is, 1/8 of the budget for the police. And part of my concern is with us, and I know several others expressed the same concern with us, eliminating the defined benefit program. It's gonna cost us more money. I guess, I heard at the last meeting, well, let's bite the bullet. We knew going in that we were gonna have that anticipated additional cost. I guess we can always come back to the table if we think that we're stretching ourselves too thin, but I think it was a good thing that we were able to negotiate that with our union, our police unions, to bring that to an end for our long-term benefit for both, but at the same time, we need to make sure we can afford it. So I guess right now with the development we have coming in, and we'll, if everybody wants to go with the 1 mil, we'll go that route. Any thoughts? Yes, Mr.
One other thing, just coincidentally, it seems that 1 million seems to correspond with about the amount that you've been able to dedicate to OPEB costs.
Right.
And so I think if you again had to explain it to somebody and say, this is just sort of reinforcing, we're defraying the cost to a certain percentage, but this just allows us the ability to try to tackle that long-term debt. I mean, if I was going to explain that to somebody I met in the street, I would probably try to tie those things together.
Very good point. What do you think, Mr. Kilmer?
Personally, I'm in favor of going a little bit further than the 1 mil, getting some money that we can use to retire that long-term debt. Excuse me. And so so we have a little cushion so that we have a little breathing room rather than being right there. And I think that we have, I think it's out there in the community right now. I think we have a pretty good relationship going on. I don't hear a lot of people bad-mouthing us or saying, you know, those guys are spending all our money or whatever.
Right.
You're gonna get some of that, but that's my feeling.
All right. I want to hear from everybody of where they're at on this.
So you're in favor of a tax increase?
Yes.
How much?
Well, the 1 mil that we're talking about right now isn't really an increase. All we're doing is replacing.
Right.
So I would say maybe a 0.5 mil, maybe another mil.
Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
I spoke pretty strongly at the last meeting on this. I support the renewal with the Headley waiver. I think that would be, I think it would be the appropriate term. So it's a renewal to get us back to the one with the 1 mil. But for the reasons that I mentioned last week, I think it's imperative that we not raise taxes and that this community see us not raising taxes. I think it sends a very strong positive message to both our business community and our residents that they see us addressing these long-term debts without raising taxes. There are many communities, not all, but many communities around us that are locked in my view, a downward spiral, or even might be argued a death spiral of ever-increasing taxation on ever-shrinking property value. And we don't want that. We want the reverse. We want growth, and we want stable and ideally reducing taxes. So I would support a renewal along the lines that Mr. Laddie has described in terms of the language and Mr. Fike has indicated support for.
Okay.
And,
Any other thoughts?
okay. Do you want that in the form of a motion, Mr. Supervisor?
Well, I tend to like having consensus before, or at least try and get as close to consensus. But if we think we have consensus towards it, then, it probably won't be unanimous from what I'm seeing, but Dr. Reardon?
Again, I mean, the citizens would be the ones saying yes or no to it. We are not. I mean, we're just putting it out there if they want it. So it's not like we are raising their taxes. Correct? I mean,
It could be seen that way, I think.
Anything, if I may, Mr. Supervisor, anything other than a renewal will be seen as a tax increase. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, and although.
well, I understand. Could we have two, maybe
Two proposals on the
well,
ballot.
seriously. One to retire the debt and the other for the police, and then let people say yes or no.
So there would be two separate questions. They would both be police villages, but one would be dedicated, like a capture
Right.
village for debt service. I believe the answer to that is yes.
So say that again, Dr. Reardon, you'd have two
You would have one millage, that would be the renewal
for a mill.
for the mill, and then you could have a second question about to retire the debt, the MERS debt.
Okay,
And that would be dedicated strictly to that.
okay.
All right. Clerk Robertson?
Yeah. Again, I support a renewal and only renewal. It is the discipline that we are demonstrating by not putting an increase in front of our voters that is most important on this issue. We will not escape or evade the criticism that we are raising taxes as board members if we put that issue in front of the voters. It will be seen as a tax increase that this board supports, otherwise it wouldn't be placed before them. And I cannot support that.
Mr. White?
I think people who file under one political party are going to have that issue. I don't think necessarily that's going to be a bipartisan problem if we have a slight renewal in taxes. Let's be honest here. Who's going to get attacked? You guys are, because you're the conservative, don't like tax party. I mean, I don't like to bring politics too much into this, but we're not going to get attacked if
Are you-
you're going to get it primaried if you do it.
Are you so confident that the so-called independents will be so eager to trip over themselves to vote for a tax increase, Trustee White?
I mean, police millages are popular, so we can just, I mean, I don't know where we're going with this. How long, and I apologize since I wasn't at the last meeting, how many years are we talking about it for a renewal anyways? It was blank.
Typically, I think we've done 5 years, right,
Correct.
David?
You can do longer, but we've typically done 5.
The first time, wasn't it quite a bit longer?
Maybe it was either 10 or 20. I mean,
It was a long time.
yeah.
Right.
5 is sort of the modern trend for us. And also doing it before it expires is also a trend. So you're going to get you won't be head lead the last year, right? If you're doing it in 4 years, you only had really 3 years of headly rollback. So you get a little percentage if you do it early. But it could be for longer if you want.
And if I could,
Yes.
just in furtherance of the back and forth with Trustee White, I'll just say this, is that we are raising more money with the mills that we have now because of the economic development, because of the investment that's taking place. And while there are people, both Republicans, Democrats, and independents, no doubt, that are investing in Grand Blanc Township because they see the value in the discipline that we've shown, that I am perfectly comfortable arguing that we need, and our future is tied to folks who have a conservative attitude toward local government, have a conservative attitude toward taxes and spending, and are rewarding us in our DDA, rewarding us in our enterprise park because we have kept our taxes restrained. And I believe even a modest increase at this point, okay, would send the wrong message. It would set us on the same downward spiral that has been taking place in Flint Township, in Genesee County as a whole, which would be in even worse shape if it weren't for the good stewardship of Grand Blanc Township that is propping up the entirety of county government, because they did not aggressively deal with their unfunded liabilities in the same way that we have. And so in that sense, the residents of Grand Blanc Township are already being asked to provide more for the decisions that were made by others that weren't as conservative and weren't as prudent as far from the standpoint of taxation. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do this with 1 mill renewal. We have done it. We are doing it. And we should pass a renewal and a renewal only. And I'm perfectly comfortable doing it this evening, but it has to be a renewal. Because again, we are seeing great improvement in our economic situation because of the work that's being done by this board. And the tax increase would be a backward step to our economic development efforts. And that you cannot separate the tax issue from the larger issue of economic development. That was my argument 2 weeks ago. It's been my argument since I joined this board. And now the rubber's hitting the road and we're having to make a decision here. And I believe we need a renewal and a renewal only, with the caveat with regard to the Headley waiver. But that's as far as we go.
Well, a couple of things. One is I want to get a consensus on the 1 mil for the renewal first, but number one, I agree that the public is definitely in support of our police and fire, and there's no question on that. I think voters love the service that we provide, and the individuals that serve in those roles. But I also agree that, when you're on social media, what have you, and I brought this up at the last meeting, that, in the newsletter that we've sent out to all the tax bills, I did get some people saying, hey, okay, we've hit the milestone of now reaching, where we were 16 years ago with our revenue. Oh, so now you should be able to give a tax cut. I'm like, no, we've got a lot of deferred maintenance that we're going to try and catch up on. So there are people out there who are looking for us to reduce taxes, but how many of them, I'm not sure, but I'm sure everybody would love a reduction. So I think it cuts both ways. But I think first off, I'd like to see if we have a consensus on a proposal to go with a renewal for 1 mil. And if there's a proposal to do a second one, then we'll talk about that. But I'd like to get the 1 mil decided and see if everybody's in consensus with having at least a proposal on the ballot for that.
Okay, do you want that in the form of a motion, Mr. Supervisor?
Well, I want to see if we have consensus on doing the 1 mil first.
I mean, I'm guessing we do have a consensus on that, but if we're going to tie it, I mean, I don't want to, I want to make sure we're doing, huh? Well, if we're going to try to, do half a mil or quarter mil, whatever, I don't know what Mark was thinking, but
For retiring the debt.
to retire the retirement fund.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to do, if we're just thinking one.
Well, what I heard was having 2 separate ones.
Well, no, so I'm okay with that. I just, that's what I want to find out, if that's what you're thinking.
I'm thinking that if we have consensus, is anybody opposed to us putting on the ballot, put it that way, of having 1 mil?
I think we have to. If we don't, I mean,
Okay? Somebody want to make that motion that we go with 1 mil for the renewal? Okay, Mr. Fike?
And do this motion, but remember that your official resolution will come to you in 2
Right.
weeks.
This motion would be to begin this
Direct
process
me
to get the
to-
language.
Yep.
So, and Ms. Hugo supported that.
Motion by Fike, seconded by Hugo, to direct.
Well, I'm not against the motion, but I'd like to discuss it a little
Yeah,
more.
right. The motion is to direct Mr. Laddie to write up the language for that.
For the 1 mil renewal.
Right. Okay, so let's have a little bit more discussion. Mr. White?
Well, I was, again, thinking of the years. I mean, is this maybe where everyone could reach a consensus on and not raise? And if we did a shorter one and see what the finances look like in 2 or 3 years? I also really don't I get we have to do it, but maybe we can get off these odd year elections where we're gonna have turnout of 7%. I mean, that's,
Right.
I'm not very happy either raising or doing a millage when essentially no one comes out to vote, but we got.
I like that idea of getting it off a year where we don't have anything else going on. There's nothing being voted on in
Mr.
November.
Lehman is not here. Did he recommend 5 or 6 or 8? Do you recall, Mr. Laddie?
I don't recall his recommendation, but any of those numbers are available to you.
But Mr. White has a valid point in that we don't know where that 1 mil is going to shake out, and we don't know really where our debt service, our payments to MERS are going to shake out either. I mean, we might ask voters to vote for another, mil for debt retirement, and we find out that, hey, that's way more than what You know,
If we're doing well, then 1 mil may be adequate. If the economy or other things change, it may not do the job. There's a lot of economic uncertainty right now. So I'm more in favor of a shorter renewal, and then in 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years. I don't think we should do a shorter.
if we did it in 3 years, what would be would there be an election in 3 years? Let's see, if we're looking at
Governor.
governor, well,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, the
26.
governor's race would be in 3 years.
No, but I think, didn't we say a moment ago that we had, the first one was like, it was 10 years, and now we're, so,
I like Mr. White's idea, though, of seeing where we're at in 3 years, though, so that we can reevaluate if it's enough.
you could go 6, and then you have a presidential year, you'd have the highest.
6, we're too far out to change course.
Well, one other thing, I mean, you're only in year 4 of the 5-year now, so if you do a 5-year, you can pull the trigger earlier. You could do it in year 3,
Yeah, that's true.
4.
We could act in the middle of a,
That's what we're doing now. We're
Right.
cutting the last year off.
I'd like to say, one thing to remember is that if we retire our debt faster, it costs us less money. The faster we can retire it.
Right?
so
So
the
let's,
issue before us is to direct Attorney Laddie to draft language for a 1 mil renewal to be presented to the board.
and we didn't say what time frame, though. I guess.
With a 5 years?
Well, so again, you're 4 years into a 5-year. You've had longer periods of time, 10 years at least, in the past. You can, if you do a 5-year, you can, if in 3 years, if you want to increase or decrease or not collect it, you can do that. The only thing, I mean, again, the limitation you have is you can't, at the end of 5 years, it goes away.
What do you think, Mr. White,
For,
about the number of years?
I think 3 personally, but I mean, if I'm the only one who wants 3 years, I'm the only one who wants 3 years. So.
I like the idea of it not falling on a year where there's no other election going on. That's the part that appeals to me.
How much is this election going to cost to run if there's no other, assuming there's no other school or any other thing on the ballot?
We have the money budgeted for the election. I don't have the exact figure, but there is money in the budget for us to do it this year.
What I recall in the past, it was, in previous years, it was probably like, what, 13,000, 15,000?
I don't have the exact figure.
Right. But
But keep in mind that our postage costs are going to be reimbursed by the state of Michigan for the first time as a result of changes to Proposal 2.
Okay.
Or Proposal 2.
Anybody else want to go 3 years or stick with the 5? Any thoughts?
Well, he was saying if we went 5, we can go 3.
Yep.
You can always act in the middle of a 5-year.
Right.
You can act at any point.
We're talking, I'm sorry, we're talking about the 1 mil only
Right.
at this point?
Yes, and we're talking about when we want the renewal to occur. Do we want it to be set in an election year, or do we want it to be 5 years where there probably wouldn't be an election going on?
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want a record roll call, Mr. Supervisor?
Well,
Well, we got to figure out the 3, 5, or whatever, right?
what are you guys' thoughts? Anything? 3 or 5?
Let's,
What's your preference?
Well, if you can do this at any time, then I would think
5?
the 5, because we can look at it in 3 years, or who's ever on the board can look at it and make that decision. Because if we don't need it, we don't need it, and I don't want to, or if we need more, we gotta.
Mark, feel similarly?
Yes, I do.
Sarah?
I'd go with
All right, it sounds like 5 years then is where we're at.
all right. Would you like a record
Yes,
roll call?
Please,
Mr.
go ahead.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Raritan,
Yes.
Trustee Fike,
Yes.
Trustee Hugo,
Yes.
myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer,
yes.
Supervisor Bennett,
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, so Mr. Laddie will get the language prepared for that.
Correct. Now, your second question.
What's the next issue?
Is there another issue?
Well,
I thought we'd just go home.
well, will there be more? Dr. Reardon asked a question. He said, look, can we do an additional millage that's solely dedicated to OPEB?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
And so I think, are you going to see what the temperature is for that?
So the challenge on that partly is, we don't know what that number, what we are going to have to pay. I know we did some actuarial, and that actuarial, they evidently didn't do it correctly. So we didn't really have a good number to go by. And we really don't know what that is going to look like.
Well, if we're bringing in 1.3 or 1.4 from the police millage, right?
Right.
And so a half a mil would be about 700,000. And I think that's about what we're putting on the debt right now, right? Isn't that, we don't have the exact figures, but I think that's what we've been doing.
My feeling is that you've at least done that, and you're actually closer to $1 million that's my casual observation. Not just dedicated to police, but OPEB.
Right, okay. Right, for sure.
I was just going to give an example of what, so right now, let me just tell you what. Okay. So based on a median home value of $194,000, right now, on that value of a home, a homeowner would pay about $96. At least if our chart is correct, it's on our website.
For this second millage it's under proposal.
So right now, basically a resident with a $194,000 home value, median home value here in Grand Lake Township would pay $96 roughly. So, and that's with the 1 mil, right?
We don't, but that's residential costs. That's not,
Right,
it's not business costs.
Right.
And the fact, again, I'll say this. I don't support this second question, because what you're basically doing is you're putting another tax increase up, and you'll basically be freeing money in the budget to spend it in other areas. It's not like we're going to do this in addition to what we've been doing. You're going to be doing it. This is going to be replacement revenue, and there's going to be you're going to free it up for additional or different budget categories and spending. So let's not kid ourselves as what would happen here if we did this.
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Well, I understand everything is subject to a board vote. I understand that, but you're creating an atmosphere. You're creating a climate, a situation where you're going to be replacing the revenue that we've been dedicating with new revenue from this millage increase, and believe me that there will be a great push to do precisely that. And again, it's not just about the dollars. It's about the message that we're sending. This is a serious matter. Our economic development, our growth has been predicated on the fact that we have maintained discipline with the resources that we have through a deflationary period in terms of our own tax revenue. Now we've got revenue rising, we've got our property values are rising, and you want to throw a wet blanket on it with a millage increase? I don't think that's a wise course of action.
I don't want to throw a wet blanket on it. But I will say that when we look at, when the state raised taxes, people went along with it. When they did the income tax on the retirees. I don't think anybody was thrown out of office because for whatever reason, people thought, okay, this was the appropriate
Way to raise revenue.
path to go. So just because we're putting a millage out there and the people didn't even get to vote on that, that was just something that the Michigan threw on everybody. But here, we are going to let everybody vote, and they can say yes or no.
No.
And, I don't think this board, particularly this board, is going to say, well, we have 700,000 from this millage, so we're not going to put anything extra on because it's dedicated to that. I don't think that's the case. Now, maybe the next board might, but I don't think this board will.
Well, I'm not prepared to gamble or roll the dice on that situation.
Let's hear from a few others here. Mr. Fite?
What is your proposal then, Dr. Reardon? What would you be comfortable putting up there?
Well, again, I mean, the number we haven't, probably, I'm thinking a half a mil. I mean, I think that seems reasonable. But if we did, and we just and we dedicated that to debt retirement, then, and once it's paid off, it goes away. I mean, that would be how
So a half mil for how many years?
I don't know how long that's gonna take us to pay that off, do we?
We don't, I think, wasn't it a 10-year time frame, Scott? When
What?
To
Previous?
to retire the
Yes.
retirement?
I believe it was 10 years.
But whether you want to go 5 years and reevaluate, whether you want to do a 10-year and then reevaluate. I mean, we want to make sure that the township is going to be able to pay its debts too.
Well, I'll throw my 2 cents in. So number one, the thing that I agree that, we've got to figure out a way and make sure that we're going to be able to pay what we've said that we're going to pay. And obviously, we're not going to be able to default on these MERS payments. My concern is, I've always said a tax increase is going to be the last thing that I want to consider, that I want to look at all the possibilities first. And I would not be opposed to putting something like this on the ballot down the road if it looks like the payments are going to look like they are insurmountable and that we're not going to be able to cover it. With the development that we have coming in here and the unknown quantity of what that number is from MERS right now, I think I'd be throwing a dart at the wall to try and figure out what that number would be. So I would not be opposed to looking at it down the road, but only after we have a better handle on what that number is going to look like. Otherwise, I think my thought would be we're just kind of pulling a number out of a hat. So I want to see if we can handle it with what we currently have. So, but I understand, there's other opinions here too, so that's just mine. Anybody else have any thoughts? Otherwise, we'll go ahead with getting a consensus here and seeing where we're at. Mr. Fite?
I would agree with that. That, look, it's not like we're struggling right now financially, especially after these ARPA dollars. Actually, things are pretty good, but that was a one-time deal. In the future, if we were struggling to pay this payment for MERS, perhaps, but we're not. We're putting $1 million toward it this year. I don't think it's a good time for the reasons that Dave mentioned to raise taxes, and I know it goes to the public, and technically they'd raise their own taxes, but even if it's $100, I don't think it's a good look. I think we are the envy of Genesee County jurisdictions and what's going on with us as far as development. Nobody has what we've got, and we need to keep that going. We don't want to mess with that, and it'll send the signal to these companies that perhaps are going to show up here that, yeah, they're raising taxes. I don't think it's a good look, and so I would be voting no if that were the proposal tonight.
Any other thoughts, Mr. White?
I mean, I wish I had some numbers in front of me. When I hear a mill and a half mill and a quarter mill, I don't know, is a half mill going to pay it off 3 years sooner? Is a mill going to pay it off 5 years? Without having this, I can't really. I know that's available info if people crunch the numbers, that they're better at that than we are.
I thought we were supposed to have that info by now.
Well, I think what happened, what Dennis explained to us was that the actuarial came back inaccurate, that it wasn't, am I speaking correct, Ms. Roberts? That the actuarial didn't do what we wanted them to do, actually. So I'm not sure when we're going to have it, but perhaps we would have it before the next meeting, I don't know. But
I would think that would be important.
Yeah.
so we want to wait until the next meeting to see if,
Yeah, just leave this on for the next meeting,
all right,
because we'll still have time.
okay.
I'll also make sure that my educated guess is correct, that we could have a separate captured millage. I'm 99% sure we can, but I'll lock that in well before your meeting and get that information to you.
And maybe by the next meeting, we could have maybe the assistant superintendent call MERS and try to
Yeah,
push them along.
sure. All right. Mr. Kilmer?
So my understanding is that we basically are in agreement on the 1 mil renewal,
Correct.
that's kind of.
We're going to move forward on the language for that.
Yes. The other is still up in the
We're
air.
right.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. I know it's, difficult conversation, but we'll work through it and we'll make sure we pay our bills.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda,
New business.
new business. The
8A.
board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of a replacement web server and associated parts and licensing from CDWG for $3,524.46 and authorize the township superintendent to approve any and all related contracts and agreements. Mr. Lucibel.
Hello again.
Hello.
This is a planned expense. It's actually coming in much less than what I planned for. So it is CIP funding. And it is for a replacement of an end-of-life web server that we have that a lot of our DPW guys, for the most part, use out in the field to manage their misdig tickets.
So it is in our CIP budget
Yeah,
for the,
pre-planned.
I'm sorry?
Pre-planned in our CIP budget, yeah.
Okay, any questions? Mr. White? Making the motion? Okay, supported by Mr. Fike?
Motion by White, supported by Fike.
Yep. Hold on now. Discussion, Mr.
Is this 3,000, whatever, is this the whole thing, or is this part of something bigger?
The whole thing. It's actually a lot cheaper just because it doesn't need to be anything crazy than some of our bulkier servers that we have. So it come back a lot cheaper than I thought.
Great.
Okay. The motion is supported. Any other discussion? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, very good. Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Raridan. Yes. Trustee White.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B, the board will consider a motion to authorize payment for easements needed for the Embury Cook non-motorized pathway. And we have Mr. Scott Haymeyer from Rowe Engineering here this evening. Good evening.
So if you recall, we're going after a couple different funding sources for the trail. We're in the grant application stage right now. The TAP application is going well. We received 2 rounds of comments. We have one item that we need to get. We need to get a letter of support from the MDOT and TSC. And then our grant coordinator is prepared to write a recommendation for award. So that's a good thing. So that part of it's going well. The other grant application is through the DNR Trust Fund. We don't get our preliminary scores until September. And we get a chance to improve our scores and respond to comments. And then we'll find out if we're getting funded through that program by the end of December. So we don't quite know if we're getting funded yet, but like I said, the TAP application is looking very promising. So what you have on here today is we sent out, we did appraisals for easements. We're following the MDOT procedure because if we get funded, they'll want to see that we did that. So working with the assessor, we made fair market value offers to the property owners. We've had the total 6 property owners on Embry Road, 5 commercial and 1 residential that we're requesting easements from. And those are just areas, the road right away bounces around between 33 feet wide and 50 feet wide. So those properties are where it's only 30 feet wide, so we need the additional space. We we've been contacted by one, the Bartles, and they're prepared to sign the easement. But they do have the option to donate the fair market value, but, you know, most people aren't gonna do that. They're gonna wanna get paid. So what you have on the agenda today is for us to have approval to pay the fair market values, so we can get the easements executed. There's a total, a little over $12,000 in offers out.
Right now, we have about 12,000 in offers.
Yep, correct.
And that's with how many parcels? With the 6, or
That's with what?
how many parcels?
Yeah, six property
Six,
owners, yeah,
okay.
and they vary in cost depending on how large they are.
Right. Mr. Fike and then Mr. Kilmer.
Only one homeowner, you said?
Yeah, only one resident, yep, and the rest are all commercial.
Okay, and back to your other part about the grants. If that doesn't happen, let's say the state grant, the DNR grant, have we got a plan B?
Well, I guess the good news is the easements are permanent and they transfer with property, so if we have them, we always have them. And it is a priority project on the non-motorized plan, so it's one of the top projects the township wants to get built. So, I guess the plan B would be we'd have those easements for next, and we'd be ready to go when we found, you know, the money to do the project. And the other thing is this whole process takes time, so from a schedule standpoint, it'll help out the overall project schedule and let us get it built faster.
Can we ask Ms. Roberts to come up as well? Because I know she's been working a little bit on the grant side of things.
On the DNR grant, we spoke with our grant coordinator a few weeks ago about that grant. It looks very promising if we get the MDOT TAP grant with the DNR. He came out, he looked at the property, he looked at where the easements would go, and it looks very promising for the DNR grant. And that is 300,000?
300, yeah.
So, and that's just a small portion.
Right.
The TAP grant is actually,
1.1 million.
yeah, so the DNR grant is only the 300,000.
Only.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
But
Right.
compared to the TAP grant, it's a
Yeah.
small.
It's going to be an expensive project, but it'll connect,
Yeah, total price tag on it with engineering is about 2 million.
right?
Oh, what?
About 2 million. Mr. Kilmer?
I was gonna say, what is this going to cost the township?
Yeah. We've talked about it before in terms of the plan, but it came back a little bit higher because one of the things that MDOT, I believe it is, wants us to push back the overpasses a little bit further than what we had anticipated. I think what we were planning, 8 feet or something, they wanted it 10 or something.
We wanted 14, the grant reviewer did, but I'm getting mixed views here because I know Dennis isn't here tonight, but he said he had an email confirmation from another person at MDOT that said we could cheat it down to 8, so I'm not
Okay.
entirely
So,
sure.
you know, part of the expense is going on Cook Road there. We've got to push back the overpasses to get underneath there. You know, but what it does, it connects the Dort Highway extension pathway to the Grand Blanc Road pathway, which is part of the Iron Bell.
Right.
And then hopefully we'll be able to go down Baldwin Road as well to Tech Village and then, you know, Enterprise Park. So it really, a huge connection. You know, and with all the development we have coming, and probably expect some more development here in the next few months to be announced. And I think we definitely want to have that pathway
Yeah, it's
connected.
worth noting Baldwin Road was designed, it's already set up with an area for the trail between Dort and Hollywood.
Right. So, yes, Mr.
But to
Fike?
Mark's question, let's say we get those 2 grants. How much would we be having to pay?
Well, if the grants are 1.1 and 300,000, that's basically 1.5 million. And it's a $2 million project, so we would have to come up with 500,000 roughly.
Yeah, I've got from our public meeting, I've got my little cheat sheet here. If we were to get TAP funds only, the township would be on the hook for $836,000. If we got MDNR funding only, the township cost would be 1.7 million. And then if we were successful in getting both, the township's cost would be a little over 500,000.
So I don't know if we can get
I actually couldn't hear the numbers. How much was it?
roughly 500,000 if we get both grants, but, you know, I'm not sure if we can get the DDA to pick up part of the cost. It's not in the DDA, but might benefit the DDA. Maybe, I don't know. Have to talk to the chair of the DDA and see.
I guess I'm still not really clear on what this is gonna, I mean, there's basically three options here if we get the grants or two.
Well, we're going after all three, all the grants we can.
And that's great.
And if we don't get them, we can say, hey, we can't do it.
Well, that was my next question, is there a plan B that says, no, we're not going to?
Well, we can't afford it, then I guess we don't do it, but.
Yeah, tonight, all we're asking is, all we're talking about is making the, getting the easement secured and that
Right.
$12,000 portion of it.
To move forward on the grants, we got to get the easements, so
So with, how much for the easements total?
12 grand.
And that's okay.
Don't go buy any property over
Yeah,
there.
they do have the option to donate the property.
So what do you think? So I think it's worth the 12 grand to get the easements over there and get moving on getting these grants done. We've been working on this thing for a few years. I know there's a few people out there too, at a few organizations that want to see this done too, right? So,
So do we have a motion?
somebody care to make the motion that we move forward on it?
Trustee Hugo?
Okay, Ms. Hugo makes the
Hugo
motion,
makes the motion,
supported by Mr. Fike.
supported by Mr. Fike. Trustee Raritan?
Yes.
Trustee Hugo?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Under future agenda items, thank you, Mr. Haymeyer. The future agenda items, there's a couple of things. One is we had talked about having beautification on the agenda, but we also had spoke about having kind of a update on, or looking at the entire strategic plan and seeing if there's any changes we want to make for the last year. And we probably need to do that either during a meeting. I think we said we don't want to have a special meeting for doing that. We just wanted to tie it in. So how about we do this? It'll be one or the other based on how lengthy the agenda is going to be for the next meeting. If it doesn't look like it's a lengthy agenda, we'll plan to review the entire strategic plan. If it looks like it's lengthy, we'll stick to just beautification. So. Okay, we'll go with that. Any board reports?
We're gonna put
Dr. Ritter?
the police thing back on for next week.
Yes.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Kilmer?
It's not a board report, but I will, since the board is invited, Mickey Hoffman they're having a birthday party for her.
Okay.
It's July 29th. I have some invitations here, and it's at the Elks. And it would be a nice event, and I think Mickey certainly is part of why we're all here. Put in a lot of time.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Kilmer. Clerk Robertson, anything?
No, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Anything, Mr. White?
Nope.
Okay. Just a couple of quick things. Number one, we had the big tournament out at, softball tournament out at the park over the weekend. Another 90 teams coming in. Actually heard from several people that were out there that texted me over the weekend that said that the place looks beautiful, that the fields are looking excellent, the landscaping, all that. I went out there today and drove around myself, and it looks, got out and walked the fields. It is looking very nice. If any of you haven't been out there lately, actually they're doing the work for the fitness court. They've started on the construction of that. I think the placement of it is excellent. It's right along the drive where people will be able to see it. It's very visible. What else? But in general, the park is just looking really nice. The new bleachers or stands, new fencing, like I said, the landscaping, everything is looking prime. You know, it's taken us a couple of years. I know there's still a lot of deferred maintenance out there, but it looks like we're getting a real good handle on it, and people are seeing what we're doing out there too. I am getting some individuals contact me. I know we put in the newsletter that went out to everybody with regard to forming a committee to talk about residential transportation or basically subdivision streets. And I have had several people email me, what have you, that they're interested in serving on that and with a variety of ideas. So my plan is to get that moving this fall. Vacation time is just too tough to try and figure out a schedule for everybody to get together, but I was hoping to rope Mr. Sears into being on that one, so I'm not gonna.
As a citizen.
He's here.
Yeah. Yeah, as a volunteer, we'll have to get him, right? So with that, Mr. Laddie, anything that you?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and we will adjourn the meeting. We have our next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, July 25th. We were looking at moving that meeting because of some other conflicts, but we are sticking with Tuesday, July 25th at 6 PM. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
You will have the Wishing Well subdivision question in front of you that night at 6 o'clock. So
Okay?
could have some folks here.
So we do have the signatures, though, the 51%.
We do. Yep, and so this will be your first public hearing to consider whether to move forward with the district, and it's always a mixed bag, you never know.
I've seen some other townships with some controversial items on their agendas lately. I think we're prepared to handle that one.
Okay.
Okay, is
Then
there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay,
in favor,
Robertson
say aye.
and Kilmer. Okay, we are adjourned at 7:02 PM.
Thank you.